Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm great.
I was in the background pimping us out. I was on Facebook throwing a link and trying to get it out there, man.
Perfect.
So it looks nice where you're at. Where are you at, if you don't mind
Dothan,
saying?
Alabama.
Tell us exactly where now.
Dothan, Alabama.
Alabama. Looks nice.
Yep.
It's horrible in Missouri. It sucks ass in Missouri.
Yeah, it seems a little cold up there.
For many reasons, but one of them is the weather.
Yeah.
So, this is Nikki now. Am I saying your name right? Magdora?
Yes, Magdora. Yes.
All right, Nikki Ren Magdora. And for those of you who are on TikTok, you may already follow him as Chaotic Beans. You're a regular on most of my lives. You also do a few lives yourself where you read.
Yep.
Yeah.
Usually it's royalty-free things. Recently we've been reading Dante's Inferno.
I know, that's the last one I caught.
Yes.
And that's pretty cool. That is really cool. I'm going to get rid of this.
Perfect.
There we go. All right. So, Nikki, you are master of 100 million things.
I'm all over the place.
You are
very
all
well
over
regulated
the place.
ADHD.
And for someone your age, you're not very old. Now, when did you first notice that you had these specific gifts?
Probably when I was about 8, it kind of hit me and I was like, so not everyone does that. And I was like, oh, and it was more of it was less of a realization and more of just something that I knew that I just had to keep doing, because if I stopped, you don't use it, you lose it. So I just kind of didn't really cultivate it very much. But then once I finally started, I really kept going and I never slowed down.
Right. Well, I had my first memories at 3 years old, and I don't remember being able to control whether I saw things or not. It just happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, now, did you have someone in your family that helped foster your gifts?
Not really. It was mostly extended family that was outside of the close range. They were close in proximity, but they were distant in relation. So,
Gotcha.
Yes, but also no.
Now, what's your first experience? What was the first thing that ever happened to you as a child?
I was sitting pretty much exactly where I'm sitting right now in the same backyard. And I looked, you can see the neighborhood behind me. One of these houses over here was completely vacant at the time because they're rentals. People circulate in and out. And it was that one right there. But I was sitting in the backyard and I was facing that one, and I kept seeing something pass by the window. And I told my friend who lived down the street, I kept saying, who is in that house? There shouldn't be anyone in there. And finally I went to my mom and I was like, there is somebody in that house. She was like, no, there's not. No one is there. She was like, take the spare and go look inside it. There is no one there. And there wasn't anyone there. There was not a soul.
Right. Back
door was locked. Security system was armed. There was no one there. But there had definitely been a spirit there.
Okay. So it was with, you would say, human spirits that you had your first.
Yes.
Yeah.
the seeing things like Fire Yutnar and the Oniri and things like that definitely came a lot later, and it
Okay.
was much more planned.
Oh, so you worked into those skills.
Yes, those were cultivated.
Gotcha. Now, did you ever do mediumship type work for
Oh,
people?
absolutely.
You talk to
Absolutely.
loved ones that have passed and whatnot.
Absolutely. That's one of the big things that I do because people in the rural South, they don't really necessarily always understand the difference between being able to do something and something not. If you're a metaphysical practitioner, you're kind of the do it all. And one day somebody came to me and was like, "Can you do that?" And I was like, "Let's see." And so, kind of on the spot, I took the tools that I already had and kind of morphed them into what I needed to be able to do that.
Wow. Okay. Now, how do they come to you? Is it like I always explain it as it's like a memory, but it's not my memory. What
So
would you
I love to
explain it like?
I love to explain it like this because they don't come to me, I go to them.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the benefits of being an astral worker because there are plenty of different ways that people can go to find them, but I just follow pretty much the most modern channel to go find them, and it's Astro Magic. It's to boil it down, basically, pretty much you start where you last left off when you astral, and I start out there, and then I go to wherever they are. I physically find them, and I kind of attach myself to them, and I use my energy to push myself towards them. Usually I do this by knowing their relative and seeing a picture of them when they were living.
Ah, okay. So, and that's another service that you also offer people is counseling in astral travel, and I know that's a
Absolutely.
big topic. Always has been a big topic because am I astral traveling? Am I dreaming? Am I lucid dream? How do you tell the difference?
So basically, the way that I like to say it is boil it down. If you are seeing something in your mind, it doesn't matter if you're reading a book or whatever, if you're reading a book, trying to astral project, dreaming, you are doing something that could boil down to a form of astral projection. I like to say it's a spectrum, not a line of dots. It's very different in what you can do because, generally speaking, you're either on this side or you're on the other side. Now, if you're on the other side, that's astral projection right there. Whether it's dreaming, that's technically a form of astral projection. You're just projecting into the dream world or projecting in your mindscape. Or you're reading a book, which causes you to create mental images, which is projecting. It's a form almost like shifting. I mean, within the vast expanse of the universe, if something has been written and put out into the universe, it exists millions of times over. How we see it is just subjective to our personalities. So that's kind of the way that I like to explain it, is it's not exactly a circular. If you wanted to put it into like a tangible graph, this side is a straight line and the astral is a circle.
Mhm.
Everything is infinite, but it always comes back to the fact that you are crossing over your spirit to do it.
Right, right. Wow. I'm one of those that has battled with astral work always. I've never been comfortable with it. I whenever the experiences that I have over there are not that they're not positive, but I don't know. I see the dangers in it.
A lot of people find them extremely overwhelming. That's the biggest thing that I've noticed is sometimes for some people the detail, especially people who are older spirits, the visuals of it became so vivid, and it's almost sort of a memory thing because it has those
Yeah,
feelings attached to it,
yeah.
to where it becomes such an over sensory experience that people tend to push away from it. Because of that is one thing that I've really noticed in trying to teach people.
You should do some classes like a
Actually, I do.
you do.
Yes, this is the first semester that I've not since 2018
Okay.
because I decided last semester. I use Google Classroom for everything. I'm a Google nut. Google Analytics, everything like that. I love to use that for the Google Classroom. And this time I just said I'm going to take one semester off to completely revamp everything because it was very disconnected. And I taught it almost the way high school teachers teach, where they sort of present the material and expect you to catch it on your own. And I didn't really like that style, but it was the only way that I saw fit to teach so much information on such a short timeline, because I tried to keep it, short, down to a semester usually. But this time, once I put them back up in June or May, it really depends on when I finish creating the materials. That'll be when I finally just like put it all back out there. And this time I'm going public. Last time it was I had to add you to the class. This time I'm going to put the link everywhere I feel fit, and whoever joins it, joins it.
So we can look forward to seeing more about that this summer.
Hopefully. Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Hopefully.
Perfect. I like that. Now, another thing, I mean, it's like in checking down the list of your gifts, ancestral work.
So
that's something you and I talk about a lot when we're talking personally.
Absolutely.
Because you always have things to tell me about my ancestral spirits that I have around me. So here's my first question, because this is a topic that has come up on TikTok. What's an ancestor? Now, is an ancestor anyone who has gone before you, or is an ancestor someone from your bloodline?
Oh, my views are really going to burn some people's biscuits on this one. So, an ancestor is someone that, in my perspective, in the way that I've seen it, and the way that I see people follow their lineage, is it's not even always linear, because the spirits are so complex that it's not necessarily someone you were related to, but people do travel in circles throughout lifetimes. People who were your friends in this lifetime were your friends in the last lifetime, and the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that.
I always felt that way too, yeah.
Yeah. Now, depending on whether or not you are close with your blood family really has nothing to do with whether you were reincarnated from them. That's also something that burns a lot of people's biscuits. I've known plenty of people who were related to their families in a past life, but they were not directly from the bloodline of one of their parents. It was more of, take for example, we have person A. We're just going to call person A Mackie. And then you have person B, who is one of their parents, and person C, who is the other parent. Their bloodline may have come from a great grandparent, and that may be where they're reincarnated from. It could have been more recently from a completely different bloodline, because if the however many greats grandparent had a kid with somebody else, and then they had a kid with somebody else and married out and out and out, they could have 1% of their original bloodline or less, but that's still where they reincarnated from. Or they're an aspect of someone who incarnated from one of those. We're about to have to shift where the chair is because the doggy is going insane. But yeah, does that make any sense?
Yeah. In a way. So when you are now, I was going to say, how do your ancestors automatically show up for you or guide you? I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say? Or how does that work? How does that work?
In my experience, usually the ancestors are there, and they're not just there in sort of like a mental spiritual presence. They're there as in the spirit is physically there near the person. And so that really, especially when they're getting a working done, when a person starts getting a working done for their ancestors, everybody shows up. Dead friends, dead family, people they never met, people who have just been watching them since the beginning, their guides who are related to them, their guides who are not related to them. Everyone shows up for the event.
I don't know if you can see the comments, but Witchy Oma is watching us on her TV.
Hello.
Can you see them?
It's fun to be on TV.
Can you see the comments?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I just have to click on the little button.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, Is that your spirit guide? Is that the same thing?
Yes, an astral guide is a spirit guide. That's
Okay.
they're one and the same.
So astral guide, spirit guide, ancestor, all
Yes.
the same thing.
Not necessarily, because guide is more of, in the system that I mostly recognize, anyone can act as a guide, but to be an actual guide, it is an ascended status. But there are plenty of other people that guide without the status. There are plenty of people that do the action without necessarily the title to go with it. That's why I'm so loose with the term guide, because if there's a person where their guides who are technically assigned to them, who they hold a connection to, are not doing their job, then I'm not going to refer to them as guides. But if there are relatives or friends or people who have an advanced perspective that are doing the job of a guide, then that's going to be the people that I call the guides. So that's kind of also one of my
Right.
more controversial opinions.
Right. Witchy Oma, do you know who she is? She doesn't think you know her by the name Witchy Oma.
Yes, I know who you are. I did not forget. That was your name on TikTok for forever.
No, Combat Barbie was her name on TikTok.
Oh yeah. Well, I still know who she is because we've been in a couple of your other lives on here before together, so I have a general. I know who she
Right,
is.
right, right, right. Okay, so the spirits have the ability to influence you. Then is what you're saying, basically,
Oh,
and all
absolutely.
spirits of any kind. Now, how do you how do you deal with? I have been a paranormal investigator for 1,000 years. Okay, before internet even, okay, and all this all this crap you see nowadays. I did ITC work with a reel to reel recorder, okay. Anyway, how do you do that kind of work? Now, do you see those type of spirits you talked about
Oh,
as a child, seeing the lady in the house?
absolutely. I
So
mean, those are the ones that are the most prominently seen. I mean, they make themselves seen to people who are not gifted in the respect. So they're some of
right,
the
right.
easiest ones to identify and eliminate. I
Do
say
they
eliminate.
do they have the power to influence people in much the same way as the spirits that are connected to you?
Typically, yes. So I want to give an example. Say you have a house and you're a young person with two kids. You live in this house and your kids share a bedroom. One of the children just does not want to go in the bedroom. They just refuse to go to bed at night. And you can take them to grandma's house or wherever and they go to bed just fine. But you put them in bed at home and they just won't have it. They're just annoyed, they're crabby, they're bothered, and you never really find out why, but they constantly have like there's a monster under my bed, there's something in the closet, there's something hanging from the ceiling, there's something at the foot of my bed, there's something tickling my toes at night. All these different things. Generally speaking, most of the people that they will affect the most heavy will be children, but I have seen ones where older people will just walk into a room, or even like anyone really, and their mood changes, their demeanor changes, and that is typically what I've seen as a spirit affecting them, or it is residual energy that they have left in the space
Mhm. You know, I've often wondered, and I know I'm not the only person that's always wondered this. How do you even get through a freaking day, especially going out in public, without being completely bombarded by every form of energy walking? And I remember being young and it being an issue for me. It's not anymore, mainly because I don't leave the house. But
Same. Unless I have to. Same.
but it's like I'm not even half as sensitive as you are. How do you even deal?
Typically, unless it's one of the people that comes through extremely strong and hard, I just turn it off. Like, say, one of the worst places that I've ever gone and had an experience like that was Walmart on Black Friday.
Oh,
Why I was dumb enough to go in Walmart on Black Friday in the first place, we're not even going to talk about it. But when I walked in that building, it was like someone turned the spirit meter on and everyone showed up. I mean, it was already packed because if you've ever been to any kind of a store on Black Friday,
yeah.
but it was 1,000 times worse. And so I walked in there, and that was the only time where I have literally been so bombarded that I've not been able to turn it off Because typically I choose to see these things or not see these things. And when I'm not choosing, it's very much a guttural experience. It's very potent when it's that strong. It's so overwhelming when it's that strong.
Huh. You probably just have to leave. Leave
Yeah,
the area. Just get out of it. Do they
there
follow
have been
you?
times.
Do they ever follow you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if my wards weren't as good as they are, I would walk into my house and spirits would just kind of bubble me.
So there leads us further down our path of discussion today. You are a practicing witch, correct?
Yes. Yes, I am.
And if I remember correctly, um, you're in quite a large coven, aren't you? Or are you still? Or I know you were at one time.
Yeah, it's give or take. A lot of them are dead, honestly. A lot of them were alive, but COVID got them. Some
Yeah.
of them. I mean, since 2019, we've had like 326 individuals that were involved with it pass away from one
Oh
thing or
my
another.
gosh, that is huge.
That is huge, and it was about a fourth of us. It was about a fourth of us, and
Hmm.
yeah, we had about 1,100 members at our peak.
Oh wow. So what would you call what kind of witch are you? I guess. I mean, there's 1,000 million types of witches. Do you have a specific path that you walk?
I typically claim to the term astral witch, but that's not exactly correct. I'm sort of much more fluid in it, as in I do whatever calls me at the moment. I don't really follow set yearly things. I don't follow set weekly things or monthly things. I just kind of do what I do when I do.
Right.
That's
Okay.
why I don't really hold to any specific term.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I totally get that. Um, and you've seen my consecration ritual that I do. It's actually the only working I share in public. um, and I call the spirits, of the four elements with your connections, which are 100 times mine. Is that how you do your workings? Do you call on the spirits for that?
Typically, yes. Although I'm I'm kind of a curmudgeon. I keep to a set network of spirits.
Oh,
When you
okay.
call the way that you call, I mean, when during your consecration ritual, you basically summoned 20 from the north, 10 from the south, 18 from the east, and 14 from the west. I was surprised you could get that many from the west because they're all crabby. Um, if I'm not mistaken, those were the water
The
spirits.
water
They're all
spirits,
kind of,
yes.
yeah, they're all a little, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much how I do it too. Is I call certain individuals and they serve certain functions.
Okay, so you have certain spirits that you work with. Same
Yeah,
with deities. I
yeah,
know that you do
absolutely.
deity work. Now, I know you work with deities, but are there deities that uh, and I use the term loosely, worship?
No, they
Okay.
are all ones that I work with. I do not do deity worship. I do
Okay.
deity work.
That's why I don't work. They're just so high maintenance as far as keeping the altars and feeding and
They are.
watering and boozing and
It's like having
all
it,
the different things.
it's like having an adult pet.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that could take your head off if they felt
Ex-
like it.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, what deities in specific do you work with?
So I'm gonna kind of re-clarify the term deity and how I use it.
Okay, perfect.
Deity, in my opinion, is anyone who holds a status on the other side. So like, it's not quite as limited as most people think. Like I work with Ostara, Hope, Morpheus, Hades, Persephone, as well as a few miscellaneous others, as well as a couple of demons that are considered deities by all account because of the positions and statuses and history they have and hold.
Mhm.
My main one that I work with actually holds very little history. It's Ostara. There's
Oh,
very
yeah.
little out there about her, but there's quite a bit once you start looking under the surface and looking into the history of it.
Right, Now, okay, so explain to me then. And demons. I actually was going to ask about demons, because that's quite a controversial topic as well. You
Yes, it is.
know, some people think the word demon is a Christianized word. I believe that it is.
Yeah.
That they are just entities like any other entity over there. Um,
Yes.
and they can do good work as well as negative work or bad work. What's
Exactly.
your take?
Demons are not innately evil, and they do not innately do evil work. Demon is a classification of groups of species. There are more, there's not just like, it's something that I have to clarify all the time, is that there's not just one type of demon. They're not all the little red horn things with a tail that's a hot red poker. You know, the way that I clarify it is, think of them the way that you think of the human race and animal species. There's so many different variations. And what's classified as a demon and what's classified as not a demon is fairly arbitrary based on their actions. And it's almost like one bad apple can spoil the bunch. I'm working with one group of demons right now called the Argonauts. It sounds like Argonauts, but it's Argonauts.
Hmm.
And they are very obscure. The only way that I found out what their name was because they told me, and I had to ask to be told. One of them basically did something bad, and the entirety of the other side classified them as demons. They're
Hmm.
not. They're actually angelic in race, and they're not even of the fallen. Angelic in race. I don't know if you believe in all of that part, but
Hmm.
they're not. There's no such thing as a demonic in nature. It's more what people have classified it as, either because of where they come from or because of their actions.
So the word daemon then is old. It's not a Christianized word.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely older than Christianity
Okay.
because from the history of it that I've seen, it seems like it has some roots in Norse, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Right. Okay. What's a virtue?
Oh, this is one that I really, really, really want to talk about. Now, if you want to really hear more about what a virtue is, there's someone in our group chat that can tell you more about it. Melly Mel Melodious on TikTok, she talks a lot about, or she could talk a lot more about virtues because she knows more than me. But essentially, to my understanding, virtues are positions that are held by entities on the other side that serve certain functions, like the virtue love and hope and the rest of them. They're basically the Christian virtue set. They're talked about a lot in old Shakespeare and different liturgical authors from the time. Um, there's also justice, and they're more positions than they're titles, basically.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
titles that have been given to people who serve certain purposes. They're very much earned titles, but they're positions.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Because virtues is not something I ever really worked with or studied. So I was interested to know and what that is. Now, what's your stance on fairies and the fae and things of that nature?
Don't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Ignore them at all costs. I know that sounds terrible, but really the way that I see it is don't mess with something that you don't really, unless you really, really, really know what you're doing, don't touch them. And I would never because I don't know what I'm doing. And that's frankly not
Right.
something.
Right. Right. So I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I don't know. I've never studied anything good about them myself.
Yeah.
Um, just saying. Wow. Okay. So how does all of this connect? How is it that what's your take on the human spirits, the astral realm, the virtues, the daemons, the angels, the deities? Is it all just one giant ether?
Pretty
Or do
much.
they exist on separate planes
I
of
mean,
existence and vibrate at different rates?
they definitely vibrate at different rates. The way that I'm going to explain it is, have you ever heard of the bubble verse theory?
I think I have.
So all of our existence is contained in one bubble. but each and every person has their own bubble. But each and every bubble has bubbles within it that connects to other bubbles. And it's a giant network of bubbles. Like, I like to use the idea of when someone shifts. We have our set reality on this side of what exists. But when you shift, you cause your spirit, or a piece of your spirit, to leave this phase of existence and go into a different bubble. You travel through networks until you reach the bubble you're looking for. Like someone who wants to shift into the existence of a TV show, they have to find the bubble of the person who created it, find the bubble that caused them to draw that from somewhere else out in the universe. Because I don't believe any of that was freshly created. I believe it, to a certain extent or by a certain interpretation, existed somewhere, and they just drew it in. And that person can follow that bubble to find the other person's bubble, and they find what they're trying to shift towards. And the reason that it looks so similar is because their impressions were built by the way that it was portrayed on this side, the way that it was portrayed on the mortal coil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I followed you. I tried like hell to follow you.
Yeah, it gets a little complex in there somewhere, but I get to the point where I like to think of it like almost like a pile of bubbles in a sink, and you got a little grain of dirt that goes from the first bubble to the last bubble at the very
Yeah.
bottom.
Now
But the bubbles
is
are,
that traveling the astral? Is that
oh
the
yeah,
same thing? So that's the same
absolutely.
thing. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
a different way of going about it, though.
Okay. So are you also saying that each bubble vibrates differently than the other?
Absolutely. I mean, you
Okay.
can have bubbles that vibrate within within 0.000, I mean, 1,000 zeros of similarity, but nothing is going to vibrate exactly the same. There's a place in the astral that I like to use when I'm talking about this. It's the center for the lost and the broken.
I've heard
But
you've told me about that.
yes, it's this huge building that exists on a network of planets. It's almost like a solar system, but a little different because one planet is bigger than the rest. And I'm talking like exponentially bigger. But this one building, time moves differently within different places of the building. It's one of the places that I believe that people can go when they die. It's more of a holistic review than the other ones,
Mm-hmm.
but it sort of dictates different speeds at different areas for different people for different reasons. It's very subjective.
What causes a spirit to stay here?
Usually, I would just say stubbornness.
Really?
Hmm.
So
There's,
they choose to stay here.
oh, absolutely, which I don't see them reasoning in that. But yeah, absolutely, it's a choice to a certain extent. It's almost if they have the want to stay here and they slip through the cracks.
Okay.
Because, there are set people that are supposed to come and retrieve them and do things like that. But those processes do sometimes fail.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's a huge world. I mean, there are billions and billions and billions of people, hundreds of, or at least thousands of whom die every single day. So, of course,
Yeah.
there's going to be some people that slip through the cracks.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. I have always in my paranormal work, and I have done lots of ITC work and have spoken to a lot of spirits. And my experience is you're really kind of no different over there than you are here. Okay. So if you're a real shithead here, then you're going to be a really big shithead over there. Um, I also feel like the message to me has been there are different levels, and we're working to get to the highest vibrational level. Now,
Absolutely.
okay, so you agree with that.
Yes.
Explain then, we talked about the deities. What about the gods?
The gods follow a very similar path, but it is a little more skewed, usually because of the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, a lot of times, the path to get to the highest vibration. Or, there's a lot of different ways that put that, but typically the terms that I use because they're the easiest for me is the Path of Ascension. And
Right.
it's full of
That's the
cycles.
term I'm familiar with.
Yes. And typically speaking, the way that I've seen, guides reach that in more of a very much a stop go method. Like they'll have a breakthrough where they will go a million miles a minute breaking cycles, doing the things that we really have to do to reach that. But then they may have 150 years of dormancy. They may have 2 or 3 lifetimes where they incarnate and they don't do jack crap. But then they die and they really have one breakthrough and they just speed rocket through the rest of it or
Right.
through a good portion of it.
Now, I know you're very, very knowledgeable when it comes to the gods and who they are. I have always, and it's been more of a knowing, a feeling that the Christian God is actually Odin. How do you feel about that?
I believe that a lot of Christians worship Odin without realizing they're worshiping Odin.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I've studied, I actually followed the Christian faith for quite a few many years. Would have been considered a Christian witch. Was in the ministry. So I'm very knowledgeable, at least about that one God. And man, I mean, he's got Odin written all over him. That's all I've got to say about that.
Odin definitely inspired the more modern translations and transcriptions of the Bible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, even a lot of the Torah is definitely influenced by him. I
Interesting.
do believe that there is a deity that they attempted to model the view of Odin after.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, most Christians worship Odin.
Yeah. Now, of course, I
Yeah.
think that man definitely went in and just
Oh,
altered the whole thing to his own agenda. There's no question. There's At
absolutely.
this point in time, 2022, what you read is just a man's book. It has nothing to do with the gods hardly at this point at all.
Yeah.
Because it's just been altered and destroyed. I think we have an awakening that we're going through, which was part of why I left the church, because the more I studied, the more inconsistencies there were, the more things were being left out. And I think that's coming out again. I think people are learning about that now, and
Oh,
that's causing a
sure.
big awakening. I think when you talked about gods being asleep, I think there are a lot of gods that are asleep, and I wonder if they will wake up.
Oh, they
The Buddha
definitely.
being one. I think he is asleep and has been asleep for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, that could be a whole podcast in and of itself.
Oh, it could. That is for sure and
gods,
certain.
gods, and who they are. So,
Yeah.
what do you do with yourself nowadays? How do you do you offer many services? I know you work.
Yes. A lot.
Yeah. You're a teacher, right?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much, I work with the school system. Yeah, I work
Okay.
with the school system.
Yeah.
I'm their throw around person, pretty much.
Okay.
I get thrown to whatever they need. But yeah, typically I do offer readings, and if you want to know like what's included with them, I can go into that. But yeah, pretty much I spend a lot of time just honing what I already have rather than trying to learn new stuff.
Right.
Because
Right.
there will be a time and a place for that, but right now it's the time and the place for honing what I have rather than trying to expand my skill set.
Right.
I
Right.
do quite a bit of expanding my skill set when it comes to non-spiritual stuff,
Yeah.
but when it comes to spirituality, I'm kind of in the hone what I got stage.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a website? How do people get a hold of you?
That would be through TikTok or Facebook. I do have Beans Metaphysicals on TikTok. That would be how people get in contact with me there. And I also have TikTok, and that would be Facebook and TikTok. That's about it. I do
Okay.
have an Instagram, but it's just the one that's linked to my TikTok. That's just another way to get a hold of me.
Right, right. So if you need some astral work or maybe some advice, counseling, ancestral work, advice, counseling, you work with deities. I'm always getting asked about deities, and I always send them your way because I just don't work with deities. Never. The only deity I've worked with, Michael, and I've worked. I followed the Christian God for quite a few years, but that's about it. And my experience, Michael was fine. Michael was actually great,
He's
but
one of the best in the entirety of Pan.
but gods I don't have a great experience with. So I'm not one to jump right in and start working with a god of any kind, to be honest.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely know how that feels.
hey, I got one question though before we end this today.
Absolutely.
Shadow people. What do you think shadow people are?
This is a really good
Because
one.
that's kind of up. I mean, it's a toss. People think different things.
So, in my experience, the majority of shadow people, they're just things that people have not honed in enough to see. They're not exactly experienced enough to know what they're looking at, but there is a good bit of the time where they are the actual race of shadow people.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
an entire race about that, but there's also a glamour that certain individuals on the other side, a glamour is just a covering that they can
yeah,
use
yeah.
that is shadows. They can pull the shadow of someone and use their own shadow against them as a glamour, like in Peter Pan. That was probably the most publicized instance of a shadow person was in Peter Pan.
Now, someone who has followed me all my life, and I know this because I have memories of him from like 3 years old, the Hat Man.
Yes, the Hat Man.
The Hat Man. Now, I was not, okay, I'm old. Okay, everybody knows that. We didn't get internet till I was probably 30s, in my early 30s, maybe. Okay. I think I had well, no, maybe late 20s. I'll say late 20s. And it wasn't until then that I realized that there were a lot of other people that saw him too. It wasn't just me. I thought it was just me. And I was absolutely amazed to find out that other people seen him too.
Yeah.
Who is he? Because I've
He-
seen him all my life and I still don't know who he is.
So it really depends because there are many people that wear the hat per se. He could be death. He could be a guide. He could be a warning. Have you ever noticed that you see him before someone near you is about to die?
No.
Or when a major life change is about to happen for
For
you or
me,
someone
he's
around
just a
you?
watcher.
So that would probably be a guide or something that has been set to nudge things along in a way that is very subjective. Typically speaking, I have seen that it's sort of like he comes in, makes you realize something, brings you to a realization, brings your mind to a certain point, and then he's gone until next time.
Yeah, yeah, he never. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's evil." I was so scared. I have never. I mean, I even remember being that 3-year-old, laying on in the living room and waking up, and there he was.
Oh yeah,
And
he's
I
not
wasn't
evil.
scared. I wasn't scared. I really had no reaction, and it's
Yeah,
still that way. He still doesn't give me any I don't feel anything. And that's why I'm
yeah.
like, who are you? What is your deal?
He has the capability of being something evil behind a glamour, but typically speaking, those choose to not get close enough for that appearance, for the evil to be, for them to be evil. They don't get close enough for that, typically, if they are evil. Now,
Okay.
sometimes, if they're very, very determined and they are evil, they will put on the shadow hat glamour, which is what I call it, the shadow hat. I know that's silly, but
Yeah.
they put it on and then they will be bold. But a lot of times those look more like Slender Man like the modern interpretation of Slender Man,
Okay.
with the very long arms, very tall,
Okay.
very poor posture,
Yeah.
dog leash. But they typically don't follow the same rules and patterns that normal shadow ones do.
Okay. What's your take on Bigfoot?
He's somewhere.
You believe in him?
Oh, definitely.
So do I. So do
I
I.
mean,
There's a
the
lot of
Earth,
practitioners that don't. There's a lot of people that don't, that you would be surprised that don't.
I think the Earth is just far too vast for us to be able to say that he's not there,
Do
that
you think
he's
they're of
not.
this earth?
I think they're probably one of the gray areas.
Yeah.
Although they are probably on this earth and they have taken a physical form, I don't necessarily believe that they have always been on this earth and of this
Right.
earth. I think they may be certain things and certain spirits that just could not fit into a mortal vessel, but also
Right.
could not be broken down. So they had to pick a middle ground. So there was a gray area created that was
Right.
Bigfoot that would serve the same ideas and the same purposes, maybe at a slower rate, but they would still come to these same revelations and have the same experiences we do,
Right.
just at a different speed and in a different way.
The Jin, which he almost says. What about the Jin? 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 How do you say? DJIN. The Jin. The Jin.
Yes. Now
Okay.
that is one that I believe falls farther, less of a gray area and more of a it's not supposed to be here. It
Okay.
broke something to get through is the way that I've always seen that one
Or
is
someone let it through.
yes. I
Yeah.
would say probably if something did let it through, it probably killed whatever let it through because I mean, just taking the much that much time and energy to pass through the veil,
Yeah.
it would kill most normal things, and that might be why it acts and looks as ugly as it does.
Now, but you don't hear about Jins being here, say, in the United States.
No, no, I've never heard
So,
of one here.
what's that about? What? Why wouldn't it be?
Well, I figure it may just be the same kind of limitations we have. It doesn't have the capability to get somewhere else. Like, I mean, it may not be able to physically cross an ocean. There may be some kind of a warding that keeps it from crossing an ocean. It may be like a boo hag. It can't pass over water.
Is it possible that it's there are these same types of entities, but they're just known as different names in different geographic locations?
Absolutely. Like you have the boo hag. The boo hag in the south is known as the boo hag. But up north, I think they've called it the knot snatcher or the neck snatcher or something like that. And then in the Midwest, y'all have like skinwalkers.
Yes,
They're
race.
pretty much the same thing. We have skinwalkers here too, but they used to be called the boo hag. Now we have a specific
Ah.
classification of a skinwalker versus a boo hag, but they're very similar in nature.
And speaking of Skinwalker, that's actually something I keep up on. Um, the Skinwalker Ranch, for instance, the amount of research that is coming out of that ranch is opening so many freaking doors in the paranormal field,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's being kept under wraps, sort of. There's info if you can dig for it. The CIA has been releasing quite a few things lately,
Mhm.
as far as their own work in astral travel, remote viewing, and
Yeah,
things of that nature, to which people still bat their eyes at, even though, I mean, what else? The CIA legitimately released the documents. What else do you need
exactly.
to
And the
be
thing with it
told
is,
that this exists?
exactly. And that's kind of where it's like they just want to be in denial because a lot of times I think they don't want to have to do the work involved. They want it to be presented to them in a way where it's here's all the information you need. They want it to be presented the way Christianity is, where they don't have to put in a whole lot of work, but it still reap the reward.
It just scares them, I think.
That too.
With some people, I think it just scares them. I remember scaring people as a child. The people I went to school with thought I was weird as hell.
I scare people because I can
you
call
know,
them out like
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean, so it actually wasn't until I was older, and I think they got older and experienced things too, and then I wasn't so weird. These
Yeah,
things actually happen. So now, people don't act like I'm weird, at least to my face.
yeah, and it's probably also because they've seen enough of your work that they're like, okay, we see the background, because that's the thing that I've had a lot is I can call somebody out and tell them like like how they're a masochist or whatever from just looking at them.
Yeah.
But at first people were like, "Oh, that doesn't fit." But then like I start digging into their personality and being like, "Here's what you do and here's what you should do." And they're like, "Okay, so maybe
Right.
I have to reassess." And I've had that a lot where I'll be like, "So, how's it going with whatever?" And it'll be like an issue with like their family or their children or their home life or whatever, or their home life as a child. And they'll be like, "How did you know that?" And I'm like, I can just tell. It's not a psychology thing. It's just a thing that I kind of hear in the back of my mind. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And sometimes it's God's coming through and being like, "Tell them this,"
Oh, yeah.
being like, "Push this narrative out there because I am tired of hitting a wall."
Right.
I have
Right.
that very often where I just hit a wall with it.
Right. How do you get that? Is it just, you know, do you hear the message? Do you feel the message?
It's a mix of all of them. Sometimes it's like that light bulb moment of that really fits them, which I would say that's more mortal than it is magical. But
Yeah.
then also I have moments where it's like, oh, and
Right.
it'll be more of where they push it towards me. And it kind of feels like, have you ever been hit in the head with a blanket that was full of pillows or something?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it feels like, but spiritually. And it's like, why'd you do that? Like, it didn't really hurt, but it was
Right.
also very much there. And
Yeah.
that's when I'm like, okay. So it's more or less just kind of giving it a second to absorb whatever they said and then putting it out there as quick as possible. Because if I don't, I'll forget it. Within 5 minutes, I'm like, did I say that?
Well, Nikki, this has been so freaking interesting. I could continue
Thank you.
asking you questions all evening. But I talk to you all the time. I can ask you questions all the time. But
Yep.
listen,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
what name do they look up? Are you Nikki Magdora on Facebook?
Yes. Nikki
Okay.
Rand Magdora on Facebook.
Okay. And they can look up.
Also Beans Metaphysicals on Facebook.
Okay.
Yes.
They
And
can
then
look you
Chaotic
up.
Beans on TikTok.
Chaotic Beans on TikTok. So you can message him for readings and counseling, for astral work and deities and things like
Yeah.
that. Thanks so much. Don't leave.
Thank
I
you.
want you to hang out. But we're going to go ahead and end the podcast. It was so fun.
Alrighty. It
Thanks so
was.
much. All
Thank
right,
you for
everybody.
having me.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.